Welcome to the DX Today podcast, where you get facts and no hype. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chloe. Today, we are diving into what is arguably the most significant shift in the history of software engineering. We're calling it the Great Handover.
It's a bold title, but the data supports it. We have moved past the era where AI was just a novelty or a nice-to-have helper. As of 2025, we've hit a historic tipping point. Autonomous AI agents are no longer just suggesting code. They are writing, refactoring, and maintaining the lion's share of enterprise software.
Right, and I think it's important to clarify right at the top what we mean by agentic. This isn't your older brother's autocomplete. We're talking about systems that don't just finish your sentence, they understand the assignment, plan the work, and execute it.
Exactly. We're seeing reports from the biggest players in the game. Google has confirmed that 25% of its internal code is now AI-generated. Amazon recently saved an estimated 4,500 developer years. Let that number sink in for a second. 4,500 years just by using agents for legacy migrations.
It's mind-blowing. But before we get into the massive savings and the vibe coding of it all, I want to look back for a second. How did we get here so fast? Because it feels like just yesterday we were all laughing at AI hallucinations and simple Python scripts.
Well, the historical context is actually quite structured. If you look at the research, we can break this down into 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 was what we call statistical autocomplete. This was pre-2021. Think of basic IDE snippets. It was word-level completion based on static patterns. It was helpful, sure, but it wasn't intelligent.
Like a glorified T9 texting for code.
Essentially, yes. Then came phase 2, from roughly 2021 to 2023. This was the generative assistant era. This is when tools like GitHub Copilot and Tab9 hit the scene. We started seeing ghost text, those grayed out suggestions where the AI would guess the next line or maybe an entire function. It felt like magic at the time, but it was still passive. It waited for the human to type.
And that brings us to where we are now, phase 3, the Agentic era.
Exactly. Starting in 2024, the game changed with systems like Devin from Cognition AI, GitHub Copilot Workspace, and Cursor. These aren't just assistants, they are digital coworkers.
Digital coworkers, a big term. What does that actually look like in a daily workflow?
Well, instead of you writing the code and the AI helping, you give the agent a natural language prompt. Something like, hey, add a dark mode toggle to the dashboard and ensure it persists across sessions. The agent doesn't just give you a snippet. It searches your entire code base to find where the UI logic lives. It plans the file changes, it writes the code, it updates the CSS, and then, this is the kicker, it runs its own unit test to verify the fix before you even see it.
That's the handover we're talking about. The human is moving from builder to reviewer. And the numbers coming out of the industry right now are they're staggering.
Let's look at that data because it's not just anecdotal. The 2024 Stack Overflow Developer Survey found that 76% of all developers are already using or planning to use AI tools. 62% are using them every single day.
And it's not just small startups. You mentioned Google's 25%, but look at the fintech sector. Companies like Robinhood and Coinbase are reporting that human-written code is actually the minority in certain repositories. In some cases, AI is contributing 50 to 70% of all new commits.
And GitHub's 2024 October's report backs that up. They saw a 59% surge in contributions to generative AI projects and a 98% increase in the total number of those projects. Basically, developers are building agents to help them build more agents. It's an exponential loop. Gartner even predicts that by 2028, 75% of enterprise software engineers will be using AI assistants. That's up from less than 10% just 2 years ago.
Okay, so the what and the how much are clear, but I want to talk about the so what. Let's get into these case studies, because the Amazon one you mentioned earlier, that one really stopped me in my tracks.
It should. Amazon utilized their Amazon Q Agentic tool to migrate 30,000 production applications from Java 8 or 11 to Java 17. Now, for the non-engineers listening, a migration of that scale is usually a nightmare. It's tedious, it's manual, and it's prone to errors. Right, it's the kind of work developers usually dread. Historically, a project like that would have required over 1,000 developers working for several years. Amazon did it with agents and saved 4,500 developer years. But here's the most important stat from that study. 79% of the agent-generated code reviews were accepted without any manual changes.
79%. That speaks to a level of precision we didn't think was possible a year ago. It also saved them about $260 million in performance improvements. That is a massive bottom line impact.
And it's not just Amazon. Look at Klarna. They've been very vocal about their AI-first transformation. 90% of their entire staff uses AI daily. In engineering, they've used it to automate so much of the routine maintenance that they saw a 152% increase in revenue per employee. Wow! Their CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, noted that AI essentially replaced the equivalent work of 700 full-time customer service agents, and they are seeing a similar trajectory for routine coding tasks. Then you have Visma working with the Devon agent. They reported a 50% reduction in project costs and a 2x increase in productivity for complex modernization tasks. It sounds like a dream for the C-suite, but I have to ask, what is this doing to the actual developers? If I'm a junior dev right now, I'm looking at these numbers and feeling a bit of, existential dread. And that's a valid feeling. We are seeing a fundamental rewrite of the socio-technical landscape. Let's talk about the trust gap. Despite all this adoption, only 43% of developers in that Stack Overflow survey actually trust the accuracy of these tools. Interesting. So we're using them, but we don't fully trust them? Precisely. There's a fascinating report from GitClear that talks about coding churn. They found that while AI is definitely increasing the quantity of code being produced, it might be decreasing the quality. Churn is the percentage of code that gets deleted or rewritten within a few weeks of being committed. So the AIs are writing code fast, but humans are spending more time fixing the fast code. That's the concern. We're producing more, but we might be creating a tsunami of technical debt if we aren't careful. This is where the shift in roles becomes critical. The junior developer role as we knew it is disappearing. Historically, juniors did the boilerplate work, the routine, easy tasks, but the agents are now better and faster at boilerplate than any human. So if you're entry level, you're suddenly expected to have the oversight skills of a senior dev. Exactly. You're not a writer of syntax anymore. You're an architectural reviewer. There's actually a new term for this that I love, or maybe I'm terrified of it. It's called vibe coding. Vibe coding? Please explain that. It's the idea that the developer isn't manually typing out logic. They are vibing with the agent. They describe the intent, the vibe of the feature, and they manage the agent's output. You're more like a conductor of an orchestra rather than a violinist. That's a huge psychological shift. You're managing an entity that works at 100x your speed. But Ryan, we have to talk about the risks. If 60% of enterprise deployments are going to be agentic by the end of this year, what keeps you up at night? Security, pure and simple. Agentic systems are powerful because they can scale, but they can also replicate vulnerabilities at scale. If an agent has a blind spot in how it handles data sanitation, it could theoretically inject that vulnerability into thousands of files before a human even notices. And then there's the unconscious technical debt mentioned in the report. If no single human fully understands a sprawling agent-generated codebase, what happens when something breaks at 3 a.m.? That is the $260 million question. GitHub is trying to get ahead of this with things like Copilot Autofix, which tries to proactively suggest security patches. But we are entering a phase where the governance of the agents is more important than the agents themselves. It really feels like we are in the middle of a great handover of the keys to the kingdom. We are. The conclusion of the research is very clear. Success in this new era won't be determined by who has the most developers or who can write the most code. It will be determined by who can most effectively govern the agents that are doing the writing. It's a new normal. By the end of 2025, if your organization isn't using agentic architectures for at least 60% of your deployments, you aren't just behind. You might be obsolete. That's the reality. No hype, just the facts. This transition from completion to agency is the biggest jump in productivity since we moved from assembly language to high-level programming languages like C or Java. It's been an incredible deep dive. It's clear that while the agents are doing the heavy lifting, the human element, that critical eye and architectural oversight, has never been more important. Well said. To our listeners, the data is there, the case studies are in, and the great handover is well underway. How you manage your digital coworkers over the next 12 months will likely define the next decade of your career. Thanks for joining us on DX Today. We'll be back next week with more deep dives into the tech redefining our world. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chloe. We'll see you then.